Hello YouTube! Today on The Naughty Librarian I'm going over my end of June wrap-up. June has been a weird reading month for me because I feel like books only fall into one of two categories, which are books I like and dumpster fires. And I know I'm saying dumpster fires, which is an extreme term, but honestly, some of these books are dumpster fires. In fact, there were enough books I thought were dumpster fires, they're getting their separate video. These are just going to be the books I liked. One other piece of business before we get into this reading wrap-up. I am actually posting on another app nowadays called Amino, and it's just extra exclusive content, so if you're looking for more videos, little tidbits of information and videos and like fun stuff, I do post on Amino, and I'm posting a link to my page on there down below. You can follow me. Amino's kind of cool. It's like basically Tumblr on crack, so if you're interested in following me on there, the link will be down below. Okay, business concluded. Let's get into the books I read. First category is romance, and I read one of those. I read A Prince on Paper by Alyssa Cole, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. I kind of went into this book knowing I was gonna like it, so it's not like a surprise, really. I have been wanting to read a book about these two characters for so long. In this one, we are following Naya and Johan, and Naya is basically an African princess, and Johan is a prince on paper because his mother married a king of this small European nation. So he's kind of like the redheaded stepson of a king, literally. In both of these characters, I've always really wanted to see get together, kind of. And in this book, they also do one of my favorite tropes, which is fake dating. I love fake dating so much. I'm such a sucker for it because they always fall in love for real, and I love it. And it happens here too. I just wanted to see it happen, and it was like a really fun kind of quirky romance between the two of them because Naya is very I don't know what the word is. She's very kind and soft. She's not necessarily a very big personality like a lot of the other women in the other books of the series. She's not very in your face. She's much more reserved and calm and kind of sweet, I guess, out of lack of a better word. And then Johan is like, you know, rake with a heart of gold, which I freaking love. And then they have kind of like an awkward romance that gets started due to misunderstandings. It's kind of a comedy of errors type of book, and it's really funny. Everyone like assumes like things are happening and like they're completely innocent, but like it looks really bad. So a lot of like sight gags and stuff. So it's all really great romance-wise. Besides the romance, this book does two things very well. One, it kind of explores the idea of toxic masculinity and how that's affected Johan's life, because Johan was always a very sensitive child, and he was picked on a lot for doing anything that was considered, you know, emotional or feminine. So it's kind of shaped him into this person who doesn't show his real emotions ever. He has to be a certain way to be perceived of as masculine, and how that affects like all the people around him and his own life. So it does go into like a really interesting topic of toxic masculinity. The second thing it deals with is the idea of gender fluidity, and there is a character in this that is very much kind of trying to figure out their gender, I guess, their gender expression, because I'll just say this character is a public figure, so it's a hard situation to be in, especially when you're in the public eye, to realize, hey, I'm not really a he, him, or a she, her, I'm a they, them. So it also goes into that idea of non-binary people and like exploring that a little bit. So it does other things besides just like a cool romance. So I did enjoy this so much. It gets into like heavier topics at times, but it always has like a bit of a light-hearted approach, I guess. She doesn't really like beat you over the head with it. She lets you kind of make up your mind for whatever you want to think about the situation, but I feel like she treats them with like respect, how she deals with these topics. So I enjoyed it, how she handled it. It was an interesting read. How's the smut? I'm glad you asked. It's pretty okay. I mean, it's not the smuttiest book I've ever read. It's definitely lighter on the smut. I think there's only like one full-on sex scene in here. They do other stuff. Like, they like fool around quite a bit, but like they only have sex once in here. So a little bit lighter on the smut level, but still pretty spicy. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I will say like the ending is a bit rushed. Like It's a rom-com, so the inevitable breakup happens, and then, you know, they have to get back together. I appreciated them getting back together, but the reason for the breakup was very rushed and stupid. So that was like the one thing if I have to give criticism for, I would say that. It was just like garbage over like 3 pages, and you're like, what? So yeah, that part was a bit ill-conceived and rushed, but other than that, I genuinely enjoyed like how they got back together, and I loved it. So yeah, I definitely recommend. It's a fun rom-com. It's delightful. Next category is fantasy, and I also read one of those. I finished the Throne of Glass series. I did it. I read all the books. I've been reading one a month every month, and I did it. I finished it. And it's kind of really hard to review it because there's so much that happens in it. It's 980 pages. It's also the last book of a 7-book series. So pretty much anything I say about this book is going to be a spoiler. So I don't know. This review is not going to make a lick of sense, but I'm going to try. Sarah J. Maas books. All of the books of this series are very long. I think this one is the longest, but they're very readable. They're like pulpy, and you just can't stop reading. I read this in 3 days. 980 pages in 3 days. I could not stop reading it, basically. It was just unputdownable. So I do give it all the props for that. It's the same writing style that I love. However, I'm going to be real with you guys. It's not my favorite book of the series. You know, it is the big finale. Like, I thought it was going to be epic and amazing, and I'm just like, it wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be. Still really good. Like, all the books of the series, I think I've given 5 stars to. This one I gave 4. So it's not bad. It's just, it might be my least favorite. I'll say that. I think the problem was that the story was just spread too thin between too many perspectives. And that hasn't bothered me before, but in this one it kind of did, because you didn't get enough of each character. And then when things started getting really interesting with one character's plot point, she's go to another one. And I'm like, I don't want to read about that asshole. Go back to the other thing. So it was a lot of like cut jumps in between characters and perspectives. And there was a lot of them in here. So it was almost too many perspectives, I think. And also the ending was very neat. It was like put together with a giant big bow on top. It was very neat and perfect. And perhaps maybe just a little too happy, but I didn't mind it. I love happy endings. I wanted it to shake out this way. I wanted it to end the way it did. It just, like, I don't know, it felt like a little too clean, I suppose. Also, it's the finale. If you've read the series, I'm not trying to put out too many spoilers here, but they are, you know, fighting a war. And characters die. Some characters hurt a lot, and I'm thinking about some certain characters right now. You know what? They killed a particular group of characters, and I'm not over it. I think about it still, and it was like a really cool scene and like a blaze of glory ending, but like I'm still devastated about it, and I finished this a few days ago, and I'm like, you did them dirty. Like, I'm like still not okay with it. Like, it stuck with me. However, you do get a lot of scenes that are just like visually epic. There's a lot of really epic moments in this where you're like, hot damn, like that would look cool as a movie. Like, I want to see it happen. It's very cinematic. You know, Aelin has fire powers. She does some pretty like intense fire shit in this book. I don't feel like that's too big of a spoiler. We all know she has fire shit going on. A lot of the characters do very brave things, and you know what? Okay. Out of context spoiler, I think a lead was really cool in this. That's so not a spoiler at all. I just me having an opinion, but I'm scared to say anything else. I think a lead was particularly brave in this book, and Irene was also very brave. This is very much a female-heavy story. I feel like all of the female characters are really taking the lead here and doing some very heroic things. And I appreciated that. I wanted it to be from a feminine perspective. I even liked Manon and her story arc and how it ends. It's really cool. I can't really say much else because everything's a spoiler. Literally anything I say about the plot, because this is the finale of all of the open plot lines of everything, so if I say anything about it, it's gonna be a spoiler. I don't know how to review this properly. But I guess you could say there were some characters that got killed and it hurt my feelings. They're still hurt about it. I'm still kind of in my feelings about it. Gonna be like that for a while. I appreciated the happy ending. It ended how I wanted it to end, even though it was kind of way too neat and like perfect, but whatever. And I felt it was like spread a little thin at points because they kept switching perspectives so often. But did I love this? Yeah, I loved it. I didn't love it as much as maybe Empire of Storms, the book that came before this one, which I think might be my favorite of the series. This one, after that one, I'm just like, not quite as good, but still pretty good. I liked it. It has a lot of really cool imagery, lots of like awesome sequences of action and stuff that I would love to see as a movie. So yes, it's very cinematic, very visual. Definitely worth the read. Unputdownable. Pulpy, excellent story. I love it. Last category is urban fantasy, and I read 2 of those. This cover is very shiny, so I'm scared it's gonna be just a reflective, awful white spot here. But I read Iron and Magic by Alona Andrews. This is technically a spin-off series from the Kate Daniels series, and this book in particular happens in canon with that series, in between books 9 and 10. So I did want to read it before I read the finale of Kate Daniels, because I feel like a lot of things that happen in this book are going to be very important in the finale book, so I read it. This series is focusing on Hugh D'Ambre. We met him many times in the Kate Daniels series. He's always been kind of a villain. In this story, we're getting to know him more, and he's kind of becoming more of an anti-hero. And you know your girl loves anti-heroes, so I was interested. Tell me more. Again, this is book 9.5 of 10, so pretty much everything I say will be a spoiler. Why have I done this to myself? Okay, without too many spoilers, Hugh is in a very dark spot when this begins. He has had a falling out with his master, I suppose. Without spoilers, I won't say who it is. And he has had a falling out with this person, and he is just basically like, well, I just am gonna go drink myself to death, la la la. So he's not in a good spot. And then Hugh is basically a warlord, so he has all of these soldiers he calls the Iron Dogs, and they're all getting killed off by his former master. He sent this guy to like kill them because they are all loyal to Hugh over the master. So his soldiers need him to get his shit together. So basically they go get him and they say, hey, bro, you need to not do this right now. We're getting killed. You gotta get your shit together. So he gets his shit together. And he's like, okay, you're right. I gotta lead. I gotta do right by my soldiers. Let's go. So he finds a place for his soldiers to live. That's point number 1. Where can I get them shelter and food and like things they need to survive? And he finds that with Alara and her, like, people who live in a castle in Kentucky. I know, you hear castle in Kentucky and you're just like, wait a minute. And they explain it in the book, but basically, you know, it's a magical world. So there's a castle in Kentucky. There's way weirder stuff going on. And basically, it's like a marriage of convenience story. Again, another one of those things I like because it's like fake dating. So Hugh has to marry Alara to make this like political union. So they get married, and it's like they fight cat and dogs. They hate each other. So it's kind of an enemies to lovers kind of a story. But like, I think that's what he kind of needs. He needs someone to like anchor him and like tell him no, because no one tells Hugh no. And when finally someone does, I think he like respects it. So that's why I think their relationship is working, even though like they bicker like nobody else. Alara is some type of being. I don't really know. I'm kind of thinking she might be like the physical manifestation of a goddess. They don't really say yet, because I know there's gonna be more books of this series, so I think they'll get into that later. But she is crazy powerful, and not someone in which you should fuck. So together you have two very, very powerful people binding themselves to each other in this union, and that's threatening to other big powers in the world. So that's kind of like the setup here, and how that's going to go into the Kate Daniels series, the big showdown. It kind of sets that up a bit. Like, now you have these guys in Kentucky who are obviously a big threat. So how are you going to deal with them, and which side are they going to pick in this ultimate showdown? You know what? I just love Ilona Andrews books. They're always so funny and action-packed, and they have this like unique thing that is hard for authors to always do. They know how to let a joke land and when to not make the joke. And that's not always the case in a lot of paranormal romance or urban fantasy. Usually they try so hard to throw so many jokes in all the time that it, like, you know, it cuts you off at the knees. You don't let anything with any emotional resonance resonate if you're cutting jokes all the time. Like this one, they have lots of jokes and like gallows humor and stuff. But when something is emotionally resonating, they let it do that without jokes. And it's a very like subtle thing, but you don't get a lot of authors who do that. A lot of authors spend way too much time trying to come up with witty quips rather than just let it be. Bring back the quip later. You need contrast in your storytelling, and they're masters of contrast. So I do recommend. I thought it was like a nice addition. It's definitely a nice addition to the story, and it definitely is going to set up book 10 of Kate Daniels. I'm so interested in the last book of the Kate Daniels series now, because this makes me so much more interested in him, because it adds in like a whole other thing you weren't expecting, so I was excited to read this one. I really enjoyed it. The other urban fantasy book I read was The Rook by Daniel O'Malley. Now, to be honest, this almost went in the dumpster fire video. I'll just say that. And the reason it's not in my dumpster fire video is because this is purely subjectively bad. It's not objectively bad. Like, do I think it was poorly written, or do I think there's a problem in the storytelling or controversial items I don't think were handled well? No, all of that's great. I understand that it's well written and that people probably love this. This is a matter of personal taste where I hated it. I just did. Okay, I did. Which is hard to say because I know so many people love this book, and I'm sorry. You can love it all you want, but I'm not one of them. It's just pretentious as fuck. Okay, I'm just gonna dig the hole deeper here and just say I'm like the only person in the world I've ever met who doesn't like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I just don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like the humor in it because it's pretentious, I feel. Like, it's trying to be so clever. They're like, oh, look how clever I am. Look at me. And it's that kind of vibe. And I'm like, get off your high horse. It's a book about aliens. Like, you know, and it's the same here. Is that pretentious, snooty humor that, like, I feel like the humor in this thinks it's better than everyone else. And I'm just like, fuck you. And it's a complete me thing. So, objectively speaking, it's not a bad book. I realize it's good, and people would enjoy it, and it's well written, it's well crafted, it's interesting. Subjectively, to me, I thought it was hot garbage, and I didn't like it. And it really hurt, because this was one of my most anticipated reads. I was so excited I finally bought it, because I've been wanting to read this for years. So maybe I went in too hyped up. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but I really disliked it. But I don't think it falls in the dumpster fire category because it's not a dumpster fire to everyone. It's a dumpster fire to me. So it's in the neutral zone of this video. Basic idea here is that there's this woman named Myfanwy, and she is a rook, which is basically kind of a secret agent who protects the world from paranormal threats. So she wakes up in a field of dead bodies with no memory. Basically, someone has erased her memory and she doesn't know what happened. All she knows is like, oh no, I have this like crazy superhuman ability and all of these letters that my former self have left in my pockets and a big notebook and binder and everything. So her former self have left all of these like notes and letters and like details about Myfanwy's life, so this new Myfanwy that wakes up in this body can take over it. And the whole concept is cool, but I didn't enjoy the humor there. Like, I felt like they could have done more with it than they did. And it just felt kind of a bit pretentious, like I was saying earlier, and it wasn't working for me for a multitude of reasons that I don't want to get into because I don't want to just keep bragging on this book. But basically, you have an amnesia story here. So there's a lot of like awkward situations that Myfanwy could find herself in because, hey, she knows none of these people. She has to pretend like she does. It's comedy of errors waiting to happen. And I feel like they don't explore that enough. There's a lot of things that you could have had a joke with that wasn't trying so hard to be clever and like witty. You could have just had the joke and had to be funny. You didn't need to be a jerk about it. So anyway, let's just move on. The running storyline is that Myfanwy needs to figure out who erased her memory, and along the way she finds like other bits of crime and like what's happening. There might be an invasion coming, and she's solving this crime that I can't go into because it'd be spoilers. But like, I don't know. I felt like the humor didn't fit the situations that it was being applied to, and I think that was like my biggest hindrance in liking the book. Like how I was talking about Ilona Andrews earlier, that they let the story have contrast, and like when a serious moment's happening, they let it be serious, and when a silly moment's happening, they let it be very silly, you know? So you need the contrast here, and this one I didn't feel like it had that contrast. It was like just trying to be a smart-ass humor in situations where you didn't necessarily need it, and I didn't feel like it added something to the situation besides being a smart-ass. So I don't know, it didn't work for me for a multitude of reasons. And I'll be honest, this bookmark's in the book because that's where I stopped reading it. It's actually a DNF. I effing DNF'd it. Well, I say DNF because I read, I don't know, I think like 70-80% of this and then gave no fucks about how it ended. So I just kind of skimmed the rest. I left the bookmark in to know where I stopped, but like I just read the rest of it, so I'm like, oh, so that's how it ends. Okay, cool. And like so I know how it ends, but I didn't like read it very intently. So yeah, it's kind of a DNF actually. I don't know how this happened. I don't know. It's one of those dumpster fire books for me that is not a dumpster fire book on principle. So I don't know. It set off my slump because I read this and then I read another book that was bad and then another book that was bad. So it was just like a lot of books in a row that were like exceedingly dumpster fires. So yeah, this was the beginning of the end, basically. Okay. I feel like I'm warmed up. I'm warmed up. Because the next video happening is going to be about dumpster fires and the books I read that were particularly very bad. I want to rant about them. You will get a salty video. I don't particularly like making salty videos because I don't like to hate books, but like sometimes I drink a lot of wine and I bitch and it's funny. So anyway, let me know in a comment down below. Have you read any of these books? And if so, which ones are your favorites? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know in a comment down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. And if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye!